I'm here with Francesca Polito. Thank you so much for coming in today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm really excited.
Yeah, it'll be fun. Can you talk a little bit about your senior year and how everything's going for you so far this year?
Yeah, sure. It's been great. I mean, I love it. It's obviously stressful with college and applications and all that, but I like being an upperclassman and especially being like the oldest grade of the school. It's just been very different this year in a good way. In my interactions with like younger students, that kind of thing. And I don't know, I feel like I've become closer with my class as well. So it's been awesome.
Yeah.
Super fun.
Yeah, and you're in student government at Bryn Mawr.
I am.
Have you been in student government all 4 years or?
I started it my sophomore year. The year before, I was in something called Community Service Learning, which is CSL at our school. And I loved that, but then I think I geared more into student government like when I got to know the other girls in my grade and the teachers and all of that, because I came from a different middle school.
Okay.
Yeah, so once,
Was that a co-ed middle school or was that all girls?
It was co-ed, so it was kind of a switch, especially because you don't have coordinated classes your first two years of high school.
Right.
So it was definitely a switch up. But after I kind of got used to Bryn Mawr, that's when I geared into SGA.
Okay, great. I definitely want to talk about the switch from the co-ed to all girls and then junior, senior year with the coordinate classes.
Right.
But I want to stay on student government because I was involved in student government too.
Oh, really?
And I have a younger sister who's now in 7th grade. And there's a sister in between who is, she's 23 or 24, but she was in student government too. And my younger sister, Jenny, my parents are like, you got to run it for student council. You got to do it. And she's just not having it.
Oh,
she's
really?
not about it.
Not about it.
But what motivated you? Why'd you want to get involved in student government?
Well, I think the reason I switched gears was just because as I got used to Bryn Mawr and I met more people and I was able to try new things, because I remember I came over from middle school with like a mindset of just trying everything because everyone told me how great high school was and that kind of thing. And so once I really felt myself, fitting into the community and becoming a part of that, like this Bryn Mawr community, I wanted to do something that was directly involved in that. And to me, that was student government. I also had a really close friend who was a grade above me, Anna Kent. She was in student government at the time.
She was the president, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now she's obviously a freshman in college. I miss her so much, but she really advocated for SGA. She loved it, and so I kind of just decided to try it. Why not?
Yeah. What's student government like over there? I remember when I was in high school, I was class president, but I didn't do all that. I mean, compared to what we do at Gilman, like the president stands up in front of everyone every day, takes announcement, is involved in a lot of different organizational activities outside the classroom. But what's it like at Bryn Mawr to be involved in government?
I think as you get older and are an upperclassman, you mature, and so I think your role grows as you grow. And so I definitely would agree with you that freshman and sophomore year I was definitely a member, but I don't think I did as much as I'm doing now. I was like more of a listener, kind of giving my opinions, supporting, but now it's like you're running the class meetings, you're the person people go to ask questions, that kind of thing. And so now I would say it's more like you're taking the initiative and you get to call more shots and like kind of facilitate, the discussions and all of that. So I feel like I've grown and it's more of a leadership position now. And
you have to get up in front of everyone and speak publicly all the time?
We do it at class meetings. Convocation is like all school president, but for class president, we have class meetings every Thursday. So that's when you'll give the announcements, you'll kind of give a rundown of the week, what's coming up, college counseling classes, all of that. So
that's a good skill, getting up in front of people and talking. I mean, I don't think that we do class discussions in English, and I'm sure history has presentations, but
it's different,
when
different. You're in front of your grade. Also because I feel like when I was younger, I was very nervous to public speak, and I think my public speaking's gotten a lot better with SGA, which is awesome,
Yeah. I wonder what was that like, the first couple of times when you just came over. And what was the campaign process like for student government?
They do elections. It's at the end of every school year, and each person gives, I think it's a 90-second speech, and then you run through, because there's a bunch of different organizations. SGA is just one of them. There's also CSL, there's an athletics association, arts council, that kind of thing. And so you run through each organization and you'll give a speech. And then after everyone's given their speeches, they open like a voting portal. And you have until, I think, 8 p.m. that night. And so the results come out the next day. And I'm always a nervous wreck. I mean, every year.
It's all digital. It's all through the...
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
I remember, I think in high school we had just switched to the digital voting. And
so no, like, paper tickets or all that? No.
Yeah. I remember going around the library just telling people, because I don't think you had to vote. Mm-hmm. It was a voluntary thing. It's like you can vote for your class officers. But I remember going to each person say, please vote.
Oh, like so you campaigned and stuff.
Well, yeah. And Cesare's heard this story before, but I learned my lesson in high school because I was class president freshman year and sophomore year, and finally junior year someone ran against me, and that hadn't really happened before.
Right.
I think maybe freshman year someone did, but it was almost kind of established, at least in my mind, that I was the president of the class. And I know I kind of got a little cocky. I was like, all right, I'm gonna win every year.
Right.
And Molly Martin was in my grade, and she was like, I'm gonna beat this guy.
Oh, Molly.
Oh, Molly. Molly is a very good singer and musician and artist, and I think she's like in Nashville now. She's she's made a life out of it, but she would always sing in the courtyard, and she'd be singing in the courtyard and say, vote for Molly Martin, I'm running for president.
Oh gosh.
And I would walk by, I'd be like, I got this one.
I got this one.
And I lost.
Oh. And
it was maybe the best lesson, one of the best lessons that has ever happened to me, because then I realized you can't just take it lightly. You've got to campaign. Right. You can't think you're the man and you're going to win just because you won last year.
Yeah.
You know?
It's interesting because for Bryn Mawr, at least, we aren't supposed to campaign outside of our speeches. So there's no, I feel like in the movies, I always see like the posters, giving like cupcakes, that kind of thing. There's none of that. It's
slogans.
Really, no, we don't have any of that. It's mainly the speech. And so, I mean, I've always put so much effort into that speech because what you say, I feel like matters a lot, since it's only 90 seconds and you have to sell yourself in that. So it's different.
That is at like in the assembly hall? You do that?
Yeah, we do it in our Centennial Hall.
Okay. Yeah, I've been over to a couple of the convocations, which I really like that Bryn Mawr does. Everyone has to give a speech senior year.
Yeah, mine's in April.
It's in April.
Yeah.
You looking forward to it? Have you thought about it at all?
I have, actually. So Bryn Mawr has this project called Edith Hamilton Project where you can apply into it. And so we call ourselves the Edith Hamilton Scholars. And so I'm doing mine on mental health and student athletes. And so part of being in that, group is your convocation will be on this project that you've been researching on. And basically you give this speech on that project. Ooh. And then in addition, you have to have some sort of visual or like final actual sort of project, I guess. I'm making a video. And it'll be with interviews of other student athletes and a few experts in the field. And I'm just going to compile it into one video where the house has like resources, I think. So, I mean, it's a work in progress, but that'll be what my speech is on. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you a little bit about sports and like being an athlete, either at your school or outside of your school, and maybe some reasons why that interest led you to this project that you're working on. Is it in place of a class that you're working on this?
No, so it's an addition. We do it during fourth periods every other week. We kind of meet as a group. There's 5 of us. And so we'll check in, but it's very much like out of school work. Yeah, it's an independent research. So, I mean, for sports, that has just been a constant my whole life. I've played them since I was really little. I do soccer, basketball, and lacrosse, so I've been continuing those forever, as long as I can remember. But it definitely picked up, like, with high school because, sports levels increase, and then you also are balancing school and club. But luckily for me, it didn't really turn me away from them. My love for sports grew. But part of loving something so much, I think, is, like, also putting pressure on yourself. And so within my personal experience, like, over the past couple of years, I've had like some mental struggles within sports and also just in a general, like, I guess putting too much pressure on myself. And so I kind of wanted to take like my experiences and what I've learned from that and how I've grown from those experiences and use it to provide something for the rest of my peers, because I know everyone, goes through different struggles with, mentality and putting yourself under a lot of pressure, confidence, all that stuff. So I wanted to do something that be a little bit relatable for my classmates.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I think sports especially are such a driving factor in these communities that we're in.
For sure,
In addition to academics, I mean, I think a lot of it comes from parents, but just the atmosphere of an independent school is like, we really pride ourselves at Bryn Mawr and Gilman on the athletic academic combination.
Right. Student athlete,
Right, yeah, and we want to push students to participate and do their best and become, as great of a player as possible. But I think you see this in these schools, but also in college too. I mean, I know so many people that struggled with mental health when they got to college. And it's funny to me, kind of being involved in sports in college and then coming back here.
Right.
And just thinking about, the mentality when you're in high school, all you want to do is get to that next level and play a sport in college. And that's like the dream, right? Is to go to an Ivy League school and play a sport. And that's what you've been working so hard to do. And really, when you get there, it's not what it seems for a lot of people, because you don't know if you're going to play.
Exactly.
You're going to contribute. It's so much pressure. It's so many hours. The coaches have to win, so they don't really, some of them, I mean, the good ones do, but some of them don't look at you like you're a human being. You're more of just a pawn on the chessboard. So I think this project's really, really important for everyone, to think about.
And it's interesting that you mentioned the recruiting process, just because I think when we think so much about that next level and we want to get to the next level so much, that can have an effect on the now and your mental health right now. And so I am focusing on the high school athlete because, there's been a lot of talk about the collegiate and the professional level, like mental health and that, especially lately. I think it's like super topical. But I kind of want to shed more light on high school athletes because I feel like they're going through the same thing, but it's just not talked about as much.
Yeah, and I like the point about the here and now, because that's what anxiety is when you're thinking about the future.
Exactly.
But I always try to tell high school players, like guys on the lacrosse team here, or even people in my classes, is it doesn't really get, you don't see it, but it doesn't get much better than like a high school sporting game. You've got your family there, you've got your best friends there, you're playing with people you grew up with.
Yeah. And
it's sort of sad to me to see, like, it's just natural, but it's sad when people are thinking about the next step when it's like, it's right here. I mean, going back to a Friday night lacrosse game in high school would be like a dream.
It's the best.
It's the best.
I love it.
But there is a lot of pressure for the next thing.
Yeah, I would agree.
Do you think that comes a lot from the parents or from the institutions or ourselves, or just a combination of everything?
I think a combination, and also it depends on the individual, your personality, your home life, maybe your parents' childhood, a bunch of different factors go into it. And I think, Bryn Mawr, the tri-school, it's a competitive environment, and so it's not just in the academics. I think that also translates into athletics and art and all of these other things. So I'd say a combination, but I think what's important is like how you deal with that and, making yourself a better person, kind of grappling with what you're going through.
Yeah, that's a great project.
Yeah, I'm excited about it.
What's the independent study like for you? Are you using mostly the internet, or are you looking at different books? I know there's a book on this issue called What Makes Maddie Run,
yes, maybe? My college counselor actually gave me that book, and I was going to read it over winter break. Yeah. But it was that exact book.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to read that. In addition, this summer was when I did a lot of the work, just because I knew, application season's coming around. So you have a mentor for the project, and so my mentor is over at Johns Hopkins. He's a psychiatrist, and so he's been working with me, just kind of diving into the science behind it, the root causes, what can trigger certain things. And then I'm also going to meet with an injury specialist to talk about, concussions. There's actually a Bryn Mawr alum that reached out to me, which is super cool. She specializes in concussions. So it's cool that I was able to work with someone who's part of the Bryn Mawr community and actually went through, the student athlete, experience.
Yeah.
But definitely I would say the main part of the research is, doing your own research, but meeting with other people in the field to get that secondhand, one-on-one experience.
What's it like with the Hopkins psychologist?
He's awesome. He actually, it's Dr. T, and he was able.
There you go.
Okay, I didn't know if I was supposed to say.
So Cesare does the podcast with Dr. T, the mindset experience. Yeah.
So Dr. T's my mentor, and he gave me so many resources, and he knows so many people. But he's been great. We met, I think, in July. I gave him a rundown of my project and what I envisioned for it, and he was able to kind of set me in the right direction, help me with where I want to go with this. Mm-hmm. So he's been awesome, and it's kind of a full circle moment because I remember my freshman year, he came and talked to the varsity soccer team, and that was my first season at Bryn Mawr in high school, my first real high school experience. Yeah. And it was just, it stuck with me even through the pandemic, which I think, had its own mental barriers. And so the fact that I'm able to come back and re-meet with him after so many years is awesome.
Yeah, he's great. And I think, you've got so many resources there with his podcast Mindset Experience because he's talking to all these college athletes and high school athletes about their just mental condition or mindset and what they're going through playing sports.
Right. I heard so many stories in our meeting. I think there was also someone he knew who happened to be a really popular influencer on TikTok, which I had been following, my friends had been following just because it's very much for our generation and young women and their mindset, their body image, all that kind of thing. And so it was awesome that he had this super personal connection with her. And he actually is working on setting me up in a meeting with this woman, so I'm super excited.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, so many connections and resources. That's a great project. Mm-hmm. It's interesting you bring up the social media part, and this is a broad topic, and there's a lot that goes into it, but I think about social media and the effect of social media. Have you done any work or research around that topic for high schoolers? Because I think that's, you'll read about it in What Makes Maddie Run is the image and what's projected out into the world versus the reality of, and that's something that I think young people struggle with today because, you want to put the best out there into the world and show off a great life that you're living, but you also feel like you're hiding the truth from people in the world. And that's part of the, I wouldn't say it's an issue, but it's just the reality of the world today.
Yeah. I mean, I just think I would agree with you. It sucks, but it is a part of our world, especially after COVID. I think when we all went virtual and we all separated, social media, the use of it and just how much we kind of needed it increased so much just because that was our way to connect with one another. And, I agree with the reality that you're not really showing everything about yourself on social media, which can be detrimental, but at the same time, I feel like there's not much that you can, do to change it just because it's the world we live in and it's the generation I'm in. I mean, everyone's on different social media platforms, and I've tried personally to take breaks from certain apps, mental cleanses, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
But it's just hard because so much talking with each other, posting, even people who go to other schools that you don't see on a regular basis. It's all through these platforms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you feel like I've been off Instagram for a while. I used to be big time on Instagram. I used to use it all the time, but I do feel like I miss when I'm in, New York City or something and somebody posts a story that they're here too and I haven't seen them for a while. I'm missing all that. So I'm missing some of the tools and the useful elements of it, and keeping in touch with my friends from college or from high school. I feel like I've lost some of those connections because it's so easy when you're on Instagram just to flip it up and say, oh, that's an awesome
Exactly. There's pros and cons,
There are.
And even when because I've taken breaks from apps, and even when I'm on those breaks, it just feels like you're missing a part of your daily life, honestly, which sounds like I'm addicted to my phone, but it's not true, it's just, that's a part of our life now, So
can you tell me a little bit about TikTok, because that's something I'm not on and I don't understand as much, and I'm sure there are teachers and people who listen to the podcast that are like, what is that, and why is it useful, and why do high school students and young, like my sister's in 7th grade, she's on that thing, and it's addicting.
Oh yeah.
It's addicting.
I mean, TikTok is funny because I think what it was meant to be was a place where people could dance. You know, the original TikTok, which used to be Musical.ly, was like you post videos made with these like choreographed dance to songs, and that would go up on your feed, and you could see your friends dancing to the same songs, and there were little trends of what like the popular dances were. But over time, it's become more of everything. There's a video for everything on TikTok. And what I've found is that each person's account who does have a TikTok is super personalized to them. Because I don't know if you've heard of the For You page, which is basically all the accounts you don't follow. And the longer you have the app, the more tailored to your interests, your search history, all of that kind of thing appears on your For You page. And so that can be great, but that can also be a little toxic, which I've found. And so it's interesting because I've heard both sides of the story. Some people love TikTok. Some people like despise it. And so I think it depends how you use it. And
some people your age despise it.
yeah, there are people who have refused to, they've deleted it, refused to re-download it just because they're taking a stand against it. I mean, I think it's great.
It's funny for sure. It's entertaining.
Fun. It's definitely entertaining. It's definitely a waste of time sometimes. I can scroll on there for hours if I let myself, which I try not to. But, other than that, I personally haven't really found any sort of bigger meaning behind it. It's just a fun app.
Is it, do the videos you watch, are they mostly funny videos, or are you learning things on there, do you think? Or
so, that depends on your For You page. My For You page has a lot of sports. There's cooking videos, which I really like. Obviously, sometimes dances, because I like to do the dances.
Yeah.
And so my For You page is something that involves a lot of my interests, I think, just because weirdly it knows what I like to do.
Yeah, right.
But, if you're someone who loves to learn, I'm sure there's informational videos on your For You page. It just depends on the person. So that's kind of cool. But at the same time, I've heard from my friends that some people who maybe have had like some struggles in the past, their For You pages they kind of hone in on that, and there's some toxic videos that show up. So it can be a bad thing sometimes too.
Do you think the most used app in your friend group at your school is YouTube and TikTok, or TikTok then YouTube then Instagram? Because Instagram's not even like people don't really go on Instagram other than to
sometimes they post, but I feel like people don't just spend the day on Instagram. I would say TikTok is definitely the number one. I don't know, I see my friends and myself included just flipping through the 15-second videos. YouTube, I honestly haven't used as much anymore. I think people have geared more towards Netflix, and YouTube is now being replaced by TikTok. It's a combination. If you want to see a video that isn't a movie or a show, you go to TikTok. But if you want to watch something that's like a movie or something, that's for Netflix.
Is it true that movies aren't really, do high school students watch movies that much, or is it mostly just short videos? Because I think even for me, like the social media addiction, or just having that in my pocket at all times and using social media, it makes you appreciate the shorter clips where you just get the 15 seconds and then onto the next thing, and it makes it harder to watch a longer form movie.
I agree. I definitely agree, especially because everyone's super busy. Now the idea of like a 2-hour movie just seems so long. And I kind of miss being able to just sit down and enjoy those 2 hours, but I think TikTok and other apps have definitely geared me more towards the quick second type of thing.
Yeah. It's interesting, the world we live in. I think, and Snapchat, and it's not really, do people communicate on Snapchat too
Sometimes. I think Snapchat is more for the communication. Honestly, people probably use Snap more than texting. Depends who you're talking to. I guess I could say that. But it's all very interesting. I think over the past couple of years, and I mentioned this a few times, but definitely with COVID, the uses for these apps have just changed.
Just because you've been at home and there's not much else to do. That's how you communicate. That's how you see your friends.
Exactly.
So, Yeah, I mean, I understand it, and I've TikTok for sure. I've had it on my phone before, and it's funny, it's entertaining, it knows you so well, it knows exactly what you want.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just a new world, and it's funny because I'm like, I'm 27 years old, and none of these apps were around when I was growing up. And I think it's funny too that people who are older than my generation say, that generation's so screwed up. And then people who are older than that generation say, like, the millennials are screwed up.
Yeah.
And today, people look at high schoolers and middle schoolers and say, oh my God, they're all addicted to their phones.
Right.
They're all screwed up. They can't have a conversation. They don't read any books. I don't know. What do you think about, like, adults looking at your age group? Because I think it's a thing. Like, every generation says it about
sure.
the one that follows them.
I mean, yeah, I've heard it from grandparents. I've heard it, but I think it just depends how they've grown up. Times change. And I honestly, unless you're living in the time you're living, if they were a child right now, they probably would think a little differently. If we were their age, we'd think differently too, because I know there's things my parents do that I'm like, Mom, like, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
I think it's about perspective, and it's hard to understand, the trends of the time or what's really, like, going on. I guess it's just hard to truly understand that unless you're living in it and experiencing it firsthand. So it's easy to judge, and I think quick judgment is something that we see a lot, but I think it's a little bit unavoidable at this point. But, it just comes with that.
Yeah, I mean, my parents they're on their phones maybe more than I am. I mean, they've got hooked on everything now. It's everything from Instagram to Wordle to...
Oh, Wordle. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I'm slowly introducing my parents to Instagram. They're getting there. Yeah. But,
Well, that was the thing about Facebook, is that it was a big thing, and now, like, all the adults all the parents are on Facebook.
Right.
And that's their app.
And right? I just can't imagine myself using Facebook. It's crazy that they have different things than we do.
Yeah. Interesting. I'd love to learn a little bit more, Francesca, about your transition from the middle school that you went to with a co-ed experience to an all-girls school, and what an all-girls school is like, especially at Bryn Mawr.
It was definitely a change. I loved my old school, and so it was different, there was no boys, and especially for the first 2 years, and definitely with COVID. But something that was good for me is I have a little sister, and so...
Are you the oldest?
Yeah.
You are.
She's 13 now, but we're super close. And so in my family, it's been my sister, my mom, and then my dad. Poor him, because he's living with 3 girls. But so I'm kind of used to that sisterhood. And so I felt like another version of that was coming out when I went to Bryn Mawr, and it was something I really treasured, because I had great friendships at my old school. But, when there's guys around, there's things you can't really talk about. You got to be a little secretive about certain things. And also, there's a level of embarrassment, especially with middle school girls. I feel like that's just inevitable. But once I got to Bryn Mawr, I felt like everyone was truly themselves and supportive of me. I was supportive of them. There was a lot less judgment. And I think people were just less worried about what others would think about them, because it was just like we were a community of sisters, and I love it.
Yeah. So you're awesome. Very pro all-girls school. You feel like that experience has been nothing but positive.
Yeah. For me, I've loved it. And, I will say there's a difference between being on an all-girls school that's right next to an all-boys school versus being on an all-girls school in the middle of, like, nowhere, because... if I was in need of seeing, like, my guy friends and that kind of thing, I can walk over the bridge, or they can come to my soccer game, that kind of thing. So that was super helpful as well, just because when I felt like there was a little bit one-noted of, like, no guys, all girls, I had this, like, outlet at Gilman. And so for me, that's been a really positive experience.
Did you find it was easy to, when you went to Bryn Mawr, to meet Gilman guys, or because I'm just thinking about the ways that Bryn Mawr and Roland Park students can meet Gilman guys and vice versa, and just kind of the social interactions that we facilitate as a tri-school. I know we have dances and we have mixers and that kind of thing, but junior and senior year are really the only times in class in a semi-professional setting when it's not Friday night at the dance, where
Exactly.
you can like actually talk to someone, you know?
Yeah. The thing that was helpful for me was coming from a co-ed school, because so many of the boys from that school went to Gilman. So that's how I had those connections. But I will say, I think, especially for someone who's been going to Bryn Mawr for a while, had I not had those connections, freshman and sophomore year would have been very all Bryn Mawr. I think as you mature and as you get to the coordinated classes, that's when you can really start to create friendships. And I have so many more friendships with the Gilman students now than I did freshman year, despite knowing them already freshman year. And so if I had to say, you know, one thing that I would recommend or that I would like to see is that freshmen and sophomores have more chances to, you know, meet more guys at Gilman, that kind of thing, because I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
It's beneficial.
Yeah. And I was trying to think of some useful social activities that would
know.
work. You know, something that's, I mean, I think the barbecues and the things that we do
Yeah,
in
that's
nice
true.
weather is great.
Because classes are so helpful because you have to go to the class.
Yeah.
And it's every other day. You're going to see these kids every other day. So you got to become friends with them.
Right.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else.
I was thinking, so I play a lot of pickleball. Pickleball is great because it's social, it's fun, it's a kind of an even playing field, you know, but I don't know, will sophomore boys take, like, you know, smack the ball as hard as they can at the girls and not realize that it's kind of a social fun thing? Something that just brings the two schools together, and the students can get to know each other, and it's not a Friday night at the dance
know.
when there's all kinds of other things involved, you know?
It's funny you mentioned pickleball because my family has recently become obsessed with pickleball. My cousins got a transportable pickleball court.
Yep.
And so they set it up like this past 4th of July in the backyard, and we went to town. We did a whole tournament. I know I'm getting off topic, but
No.
we did this whole tournament, and it was awesome. I personally won with my cousin, I'm not going to lie, but
There you
it was
go.
awesome. And
Yep.
I think that's a good idea. You know, I think competition's awesome. Like,
Yeah.
it's a good way to bring people together. And pickleball could be great. We could do like a field day or something. I'm trying to think if there's ways. It'd be good if the teams could be across the schools, not like, because we do have our tri-school sports days and tri-school spirit days and all of that. But maybe if we did something where, you know, there's a kind of a crossover where Gilman, Bryn Mawr, and RPCS all had to be on one team, like one person from
Yeah.
each school, or a few people from each school were one team, that could be really good.
Pickleball tournament, Gilman boy, Bryn Mawr girl together on a team.
I love it.
And it's a huge bracket.
We're going to make this happen. I love it.
So we need to build some pickleball courts at Gilman, and that's it. I think it's in the works. People
There's
are
our
talking
answer.
about it. So that's a really good idea. I mean, I don't know. I like that. But pickleball's the best.
I love it.
It's social. It's fun. It's competitive.
You don't have to be incredibly good at sports to do it, you
You
know?
don't have to be that athletic.
No.
You know, you just got to make contact with the ball and hit it over the net. So, yeah, we'll try to get it going. All right, so how about your classes? Bryn Mawr, 4 years. What subjects have really called to you? And maybe at the next stage of your academic experience, is there anything that you think you might be interested in?
I mean, for my focus in college, I want to major in chemistry. I've always loved the sciences, and I took an AP chemistry class last year, and my teacher, shout out Ms. Gladkey, was amazing, and I felt my confidence in science growing and also just my love for it growing. That also could be because both my parents are in medicine, so I feel like I've had like that influence on me. So I always kind of knew I wanted to maybe do something in medicine. And so science seemed like the logical route, but the more I involved myself in science, the more I loved it. So that's what I would want to major in. But I've also found that I have a really big passion for languages, and I've been able to grow that at Bryn Mawr. We have a dual language program, and so I'm able to study both French and Spanish. And that's been amazing because, you know, it's the best of both worlds, and I can, you know, pick up more than one language. And I think, personally, I think learning a language is such a powerful and important part of, like, our community and, you know, culture, and being able to, I don't know, immerse yourself in other settings and other situations. And just for meeting new people.
Yep.
I like to think I'm a people person, so I think it's a great way to do that
Yeah.
and potentially travel.
That's
So,
a
yeah.
great perspective, and I wish I had that when I was in high school, because I was one of those people, the worst type of people, who thought like Spanish class was kind of a joke. And I did all right. I did well in the class, but like I got in there, I was like, I'm not really gonna. I
Right.
can't really project out into the future and see how one day I'm gonna want to go to Spain, and
Yeah.
if I can't speak, it's just gonna limit me. But now you can go to Spain, you can go to France.
And I might want to study abroad in college, so this is also super useful for that.
Yeah. Where would you want to go?
I mean, a classic answer is Paris, because that just seems so beautiful.
Have you been there before?
I went when I was 10, and I remember it, but I think I wasn't as good as French back then. I don't think I appreciated the culture as much just because I was young, didn't have as much of a perspective as I do now. So I think I'd really be able to appreciate it on another level if I went back, especially if I could like study while going there.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
That's the dream.
Yeah. So do you think you can have a full conversation with someone in France?
I could try.
You're pretty fluent.
Yeah, I've been taking it since kindergarten, so it's been a while. And I did AP French last year, so that was where I think, because there's a lot more verbal conversation in that class, so I think that really progressed my skill. But I wouldn't say I'm completely fluent, but I can definitely
carry
hold
on.
the conversation.
And that's more than I could. I only had bonsoir and what else did I have? Yeah, bonjour. That's it. I didn't have
Night and
much.
day.
Yeah, I could greet and say goodbye to people, but that's about it. Because I went to Paris this past summer, and it was amazing.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'm so jealous.
Yeah, you'll get there. Another question for you. So writing, definitely a skill for you. I had you in English last year. You know how to write really, really well. Where do you think you learned how to write that well? Because most people, you've got to read a lot. And
Right.
I don't know. Where do you think you've got your skills for writing? Because I think that's another skill that you have that you can incorporate into this.
I mean, honestly, I don't know, because I've loved to read, but I've found, especially throughout high school, I've had less and less time to do so. And it's something I wish I could do more often, but I don't read as much as I would hope and as much as I would like to. And so I think, honestly, my languages has helped me with English, just because the more you learn another language, you can translate it over to English. And obviously, I'm more advanced in English than I am French and Spanish, but I've been able to parallel what I've learned. And also, I just think I spend a lot of time on things. I find with essays and poems and all that, what we did with our writing assignments, I put my heart and soul into those. And so I put in the time and I put in the work, and I really want to create something that's meaningful to me and that sounds like I care and I've put in this effort. And so honestly, I just think it comes from my heart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And hard work.
Right.
I mean, I think that's very true. It's a good message for younger high school students, because a lot of high school, I think, is effort. I mean, some of it obviously is, just your ability, but so much of high school is how much effort you put into it.
I feel like there's very few classes in the tri-school that you can just cruise by with without doing a lot of work, You got to put in your part of the bargain.
And that kind of what separates like the good students from the really, really good students is, and high school is tough. I remember staying up super late and working a job in high school and just not having enough time in the day. And then you've got an assignment due the next day. College is a little bit different, because then you have a couple weeks to get something done. But it's just it's a little bit of grit, It's like, I got to stay up and do this and put more effort into it.
I mean, I think it's a good experience, because I think it's going to prepare us for college. And it's something that I've really appreciated from the tri-school, community and the way we kind of run things here. Some people might think, I feel like definitely from other schools, think it's too much academic work, too much hard deadlines, competitive nature. But I think it's super beneficial, because I feel like ready and I feel like I'm capable of putting in that effort and, keeping up with higher classes, that kind of thing.
Now, the competitive atmosphere at Bryn Mawr is something that people talk a lot about, and there are some positives to that and some negatives about that. But for you, like, how do you feel about that atmosphere at a school? Like, does it drive you to work harder and do better, or are there negative elements to it too, do you think?
I think there's both. And I think I had to grow into liking the nature and the competitive spirit, because when I first came, I was just overwhelmed. It was a lot. But like you said, it started to drive me to do better, especially with COVID, when you're on that personal reflection in your own like separate life.
Yeah.
That's when you kind of take a step back and realize how you want the next couple of years to go. And so I found definitely a more positive experience from the competitive nature, because I think it's pushed me to, go beyond my limits.
And you were ninth grade in COVID?
I was
10th grade.
Oh, the start of COVID was the end of ninth grade.
Can you believe that last year, I think at this time, we were still wearing masks?
Were we actually?
Yeah. December, I think we were still wearing masks.
That's crazy.
In school, in classes, yeah.
That's crazy. Time has flown by.
It has.
Scary.
What else about Bryn Mawr do you think that the school does really well? Like, what do you really like about, other than the sisterhood and the bonds that you formed with your friends and classmates there and the competitive nature of the school? Like, what about the school do you think works really well?
I could go on and on about Bryn Mawr and how much I love it. But I would say they really, Bryn Mawr loves each and every one of their students. And they want each student to be the best they can be. And that involves pushing them a little to, break out of their comfort zones and try new things. Maybe that's joining a sports team. Maybe that's starting a new club. And I feel like it's kind of classic Bryn Mawr answer to say, stepping out of your comfort zone, But it's true. I think there's so many students on that campus that are in multiple different areas, excelling, at things they maybe never thought they could excel at. And so I really appreciate that about the Bryn Mawr community, because you can really tell that they care about their students and that they want what's best for everyone.
Yeah, I think that's good advice for freshman or sophomore, 8th grader who's coming into Bryn Mawr. Just try to step out of your comfort zone, try new things out. It's good advice for my younger sister for student council. And you have a 13-year-old sister too.
She is in the high school process. She's applying to high schools this year. So my parents have 2 application processes.
Oh, wow.
It's crazy, but yeah. I'm trying to push her to Bryn Mawr, but we don't know.
Yeah, well, that's good. I mean, for a younger student, I think that's good advice for my sister too, is try out for student council, because you never know, it could be really, really beneficial. What else do you like to do on campus over there? I mean, you've got 3 sports. You're in basketball season right now.
Oh, yes.
How's that looking? How's that shaping up?
We're doing pretty well. I think this year is definitely one of our better years. I mean, we won in my freshman year. We did really well and won that championship. But since then, I think this is definitely our best year so far. And it's awesome that, as an upperclassman on the team, you can kind of set the tone for how you want this team relationship to be. And I felt that it's super close this year, and we're really gelling. So
really? Already?
I'm really excited. We're going to do some fun activities over winter break.
Yeah, that's really important with a team, is to do some things outside of the sport itself, just hang out somewhere or go on a trip or a field trip somewhere. That's where the bonds are created. That's really important. How about lacrosse?
Lacrosse? Okay? I love lacrosse. It's awesome. I definitely would say it's been a learning experience for me, because lacrosse is the sport I've always been the least confident in, just because I think I've always put more time and I've developed more skill in the other 2. But I've always loved lacrosse. So, of course, I'm going to do it at Bryn Mawr. But it's been something that I've had to, grow my confidence, grow my position on the team, because I would say I'm less of a, driving factor on the lacrosse team as other sports, because it's just not my main sport. But that doesn't mean I love it any less. And I think it's been awesome. I was on the bench my first 3 years, or 2 years, I guess. Last year I wasn't. But that was an experience in itself, because you get to see the field and you get to be the encourager. And I think the bench is just as important of a position as on the field. And so that was a learning experience, and
That's
I loved it.
That's a great mindset.
Yeah.
That was me too. I mean, I was on the bench for a lot of my college lacrosse, and when you talk about, mental health, if you're devoted to a team, you show up every day for practice, you work just as hard as the starters. and you just don't, for whatever reason, get out there as much, it's hard to figure out what is my role on the team. And if it's rooting for the other players and being a good teammate, I think I teach this leadership character class for seniors, and I'm thinking about like what is a leader a lot, and what are their good leadership characteristics. And I think about one of my teammates in college who didn't play at all, like never played, but was the most positive guy I think I've ever met. Even when like he was just getting, he wasn't getting what he deserved on the team. He should have played a little bit. He was a great guy. He worked really hard. He was just as good to be out there as other people.
Right.
But he was the most positive guy. He never wasn't smiling. And I think like that's a leader right there, right?
I love
you don't
that,
have to be the captain of the team. You don't have to be the best player. If you show up every day and you encourage everyone else, you're so important on a team. So I think that's important to consider when you think about, the right now, as you were talking about with high school sports.
And I think part of that, which is crazy because even though it's the sport I haven't done, it's the sport I've done the least, I think it's the sport I've grown from the most because of what you're saying, the now. Like, even when you're not maybe the star player on the field, you're still so important, and having that mindset and growing that mindset. Yeah.
And soccer is that's your favorite.
I love soccer, yes.
Yeah. How long have you been playing soccer?
Oh gosh,
Forever?
Since I was 4, at least. It's been forever.
Now, is soccer something you want to do in college, or do you want to do that on the side in college? You want to keep playing, keep it involved in your life?
So for a time, I actually had considered getting recruited and playing soccer in college. But as I reflected more, because I'm someone who is just so excited about new things, and that's kind of what happened to me as I was going to high school, and now I'm seeing it again going to college. I hear so much about the college experience, and I've heard endless good things about different areas of what I can do, that kind of thing. And so the more I thought about it, I do want soccer to be a part of that, but I don't think I want it to be the main or only driving force of my college experience.
Yeah.
So I'm going to play club soccer somewhere, but I also maybe want to do student government or other clubs, maybe tutoring, that kind of thing. I'm excited to just try everything.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great move. I mean, playing a sport in college it's just a full-time job. And it's not to say it's not great, but it's not to say you don't meet a lot of really cool people on your team that are lifelong friends, but it's so many hours and such a dedication that I don't feel like people understand as much. It's just, it's a different type of college experience. So
It took me a while to get to that point because I know for a while I was like, I want to play soccer in college. And that was a part of, I think, what led me to make my Edith Hamilton project, because I was thinking so much about that next level. But I love my soccer still, but I want it to be one part of many parts of college.
Awesome. Well, it's been a great conversation.
Yeah.
See, it's not nerve-wracking at all.
Right? It got
Once
better.
You get going, all the camera devices
got
and everything.
Into the flow.
Last question is something that we kind of do on every episode, is the book recommendation. And I was wondering if you thought of any books that really influenced you, that you've read, that you could share with people who are listening.
So my book recommendation is Never Let Me Go. I read it in my English class 2 years ago, and it's by Kazuo Ishiguro, and he is just amazing. I love his writing style. It's kind of a dystopian fiction, and it's about, I'll give a little brief summary, I guess. It's about these students who go to a boarding school called Hailsham, and it seems like a normal boarding school. Don't worry, I won't give any spoilers, because it seems normal. They teach a normal curriculum, teach good manners, how to be a good person, that kind of thing. Everything seems like how it is today in our world. But what I really love that the author does is that slowly throughout the book, he reveals more and more about what's really going on at that school, which I won't say. But I liked that as I was reading it, I learned new things, but so did the characters. So it kind of felt like I was in the book with them, because we were both being like told secrets, I guess. So that was awesome.
Something strange is going on.
Something's happening, and you don't know what it is until, it's like a gradual realization.
Yeah,
which I liked.
I remember reading that, and it was freaky. You can't put it down once you start it. I never understand, because we teach that at Gilman, I think in the 10th grade, and some people don't like it. I'm like, how do you not like that book?
I like the suspense. I love the mystery. I think it keeps me hanging, you know?
Yeah. That's a great recommendation. I'm surprised no one else has brought
Me
that
too.
into the podcast. But have you read The Remains of the Day by him?
I have not.
That's a good one too.
I also heard he's writing a new one called Clara and the Sun or something, and I think it's the same kind of vibe, like mystery dystopian, something like that. And I think I'd be interested in reading that as well. But what was the book you had recommended just now?
The Remains of the Day, and it's about it's about a butler at a pretty fancy, lack of a better term, like estate in England, because I think Kazuo Ishiguro is from Japan, but he lived in England most of his life.
And then
maybe
he got his like England citizenship, I think.
I think
like that.
so. So it's set in the 30s, and I teach it, or I have my students read it for summer reading in the leadership class, because it's about this butler who's working, like he's a very, very devoted and serious worker. Like he's tied to his job, super professional. You respect him for a lot of reasons, mostly because he's just like, he only cares about his job. And it's pretty, when you think about hard work and focus and all of these things that we're talking about, he represents that.
Yeah.
So he comes in every day, is very devoted to his Lord Darlington, who is the person who, runs the estate, and he's a very influential figure. But he also hears these different things that are going on around the estate that aren't so good, because it's set in the 30s. There's like some Nazis there, and they're discussing these different things. And he's so tied to his job that he doesn't care about anything else in his life. He doesn't care about like anything romantic. He doesn't care about his family. He doesn't care about the immoral things that are going on. So it's really a question about how much professionalism is dignified,
Yeah.
But that guy's brilliant, that writer.
He's really good.
Clara and the Sun, I think, is artificial intelligence, and it's
my goodness.
Yeah.
I am taking a women's science fiction English class right now, and we've been speaking so much about AI, and it's so interesting, and I have found that this is one of my favorite classes this year, which typically isn't the case. Like for me, I've always gravitated, like I said earlier, to sciences and that kind of thing. I love it. We read Frankenstein, but there have been a few dystopian readings as well by like Octavia Butler, N.K. Jemisin, about AI, and those have been super interesting. One was called Walking Awake, and it's about this other world where there are facilities, and there are these creatures called the Masters, and they are AI, and the Masters use human bodies, which is kind of crazy. They like use human bodies to keep living. So they are creatures living inside a human body, but as that human body gets older, the master needs to switch to another body. And so there's ethical questions that are raised, but at the same time, it's kind of like honestly gory in a way. It's kind of scary, it's unsettling, and it's about the people who work because there are people who work at the facilities who can't donate their bodies because they have either had like some health issues in the past or other reasons. So it's about them slowly realizing like, wait, this isn't right. We need to, do something about it. But I've loved all the stories we've read about like other worlds with like artificial intelligence, that kind of thing. I think it's super cool.
I'm surprised they don't teach Never Let Me Go in that class.
I know.
Yeah,
it might be because we do it earlier, but it would be perfect.
Westworld, have you watched that show at all?
Not.
Oh, would
I like it?
It's a recommendation. I mean, it's tough to start a new show, but I think maybe Winter Break, Westworld. I'm not a big, show watcher, but I watched the first season of that, and it's about everything we're talking about. So
I would like that then.
I actually asked my class the other day, and I didn't really get a great response because it's a tough question, but the question of if you read a really beautiful poem or a piece of writing and later you found out that it was written by artificial intelligence, how would you feel?
Oh my goodness. Everything we're talking about is relating to my English class.
you guys talk about that question?
We did an activity yesterday where we read so there was an essay prompt. We read 4 different essays in response to that prompt, 2 of which had been written by AI, 2 of which had been written by the class of 2022 Bryn Mawr students. And we didn't know who wrote which, and we did guess like the authors of each one. And we got every single one wrong. The ones we thought were written by students had been written by AI. And the ones we thought were written by like a computer system was written by the students. It was crazy. Like, I'm still unsettled from it. It's honestly a little scary how like real these systems can be. But I think that's just part of our world as we like go further into the future. I'm interested, but also a little bit like, oh, what's gonna happen?
Yeah.
I don't know. It was really cool.
I'd be disturbed. I'd feel like I was deceived.
It was shocking. I had to take a step back. Like,
yeah, I mean, what are English teachers gonna do if that's possible? You know, what am I gonna do? Just
put
my
the
stack
essay
of
prompts,
papers.
yeah.
I don't know who wrote what, or if it's a computer, or
yeah, you really can't tell at this point who's who.
yeah. First, it's plagiarism. That's hard enough to figure out.
I know.
Now it's like, all right, artificial intelligence writing papers.
It's like our next big problem in the English classroom. Oh, goodness.
Jeez. Well, thank you so much for coming in today. It was a great conversation.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Hope people enjoyed listening to it, and thank you, Cesare. But
thank you.
Francesca, it's been fun. Thank you so much.
It's been awesome. Thank you.
Have a great senior year.
Thanks.